I'm Tony Jones. Here's a bonus question we couldn't fit on Q&A. It's from Francisco Valencia.
Daniel Ellsberg, who released the Vietnam War Pentagon Papers, is regarded as a historically important whistleblower. Why then does the Australian government seem to think that Chelsea Manning, having done essentially the same thing, is such a danger to our country?
Anthony Albanese.
I think it's a question for the government first.
Well, would you like to see Chelsea Manning visit Australia? That's a question for you.
Well, I think it is... We should stop people coming if they're going to present a threat to us. I can't see why she wasn't given a visa, but I'm not a privy to the security briefings and all of that. There may well be a reason. The government needs to explain, though, what it is.
She might be a serious threat to transphobic people.
Well... Oh, hang on a minute. It's got nothing to do with transphobic people. I mean, Chelsea Manning's a criminal. Chelsea Manning's a criminal. I mean, she swore an allegiance to the US Army. She then decided to leak 750,000 documents about the American war effort, including our people, I might add, to Wikipedia, and this prejudiced the opportunity for those people to be treated safely in the theatres of war they are occupying. I wouldn't have anything to do with Chelsea Manning coming to Australia. And if she passes the character test, then it must be a very low hurdle.
She has been pardoned by a president.
She hasn't been pardoned. She was commuted. Commuted means the sentence she has already endured will stay. She has not been pardoned by Barack Obama.
Good point. OK. Annika?
I think there's a big difference. Look, my whole being a journalist business model relies on whistleblowers, but there is a big difference between what WikiLeaks do and what newspaper journalists do. And let's not make any, let's make this clear. Putting that information out there endangered people and ultimately took lives. We ultimately decide who comes to our country, and while there may not have been any perceived threat from something which was effectively a speaking tour, that's our government's role to do that. But I always find it funny in these situations, it just boosts publicity, and their ticket sales must go through the roof, when they go to New Zealand.
Which is why the government should have just explained what its reasoning was, and I don't know why they didn't.
Steve Chabot.
Well, there's a pretty basic principle that applies to visas. If you get imprisoned for longer than 12 months, you generally can't get a visa to come to Australia. And in this particular case, Chelsea Manning was served 7 years in jail. And yes, President Obama
got 35.
Correct. President Obama did reduce it from 35 down to 7, but it's still well past the 12 months. And, despite the sort of political opportunism that Anthony's displaying, we don't comment on a regular basis. We don't. Good government doesn't mean you get into the weeds on every single time. You either say yes or no to a visa. And that's precisely the reason why we don't get into that commentary.
Good on you.
Because if we started doing that on every single visa case, we'd never stop.
Good on you.
OK, Elmarie.
I hesitate to say this, but I agree with Alan. I do. For me, this just seems a fairly straightforward, cut and dried case of whatever the politics of it might be, or whatever you might think about what she did or didn't do. There's just the rules are fairly clear, and we're talking a lot here about immigration and rules and who's exempt and who isn't. But this is one of those cases where it seems fairly straightforward to me.
OK, well, that's all we have time for. Please thank you for your question, I should say, Francisco.